Shakespeare's Hamlet penned the phrase, "The clothes maketh the man." With this video, the materials maketh the hookshot. Right, this is where we left off in the previous episode of the hookshot. So we've got no materials, and here we are over in the shading tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to an add-on called Blenderkit. This is the website, and here you can find plenty of materials of all types. So feel free to have a look at that at blenderkit.com. So what you want to do is download the Blenderkit add-on and then save that to your hard drive, of course. Head over to Preferences, Add-ons, Install, and navigate to the zip file you downloaded. And it should show up as this entry there. And make sure that's turned on, of course, and here it is in the sidebar there. Now, you can sign up for free, doesn't cost you anything. Log in and you'll appear there, basically. And here you can select different categories for searching for any assets that you want to find, from models right through to brushes. So as you can see, you get some really cool stuff for free. Some of the assets there are not free, they're only paid, so do bear that in mind. So I'm going to head over to the materials section there and search for leather. And we've got quite a few results. So pick the one that you like. Got some nice ones there. I'm going to go for this one. I'm going to click and drag that and then drop it onto the handle. And Blenderkit will load that material and assign it to that object. Now, if I zoom in there, it doesn't quite look like leather, right? And that's because when we look at the material that it loaded, it's actually using UVs. So you can see we've got a couple of texture maps there that came with the material. Leather 32. So we've got a normal map, a roughness, and a diffuse. And that texture is actually from cc0textures.com. There it is, leather 32. So you could download it directly from there, select the size that you want and load it into your material. Right, so as I said, we can't see the material because this is expecting the model to be UV unwrapped, which it isn't, of course. So you could do that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to switch that to object. But then for that to work, we need to switch these image nodes to blend, sorry, not blend, box, not flat, and turn the blend value to 1. So I'll do that on all of those. There's only 3. Make sure you do all of the images, otherwise they won't match up nicely. And you can see there in the viewport, that's looking much, much better now. Now, if you're happy with that, leave that as it is, and you're done. So I'm just expecting it there, and what I want to do is make that a little bit more brown in color. So what I would do is go to converter and add a color ramp and just drop that onto the connector there. Let's just zoom in a little bit there. And all you need to do here is just change the color values to something that you prefer. So I went with the dark brown on that side. I copied that, pasted it there, and then lightened it a little bit there. You can pause the video if you want to use the exact values. After that, it's a matter of just playing around with these markers to get the effect and look that you're happy with. So I went with something like that. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let's get to the main material, which is going to be the blue. I'm going to use blue. That's what the original game object, I believe, was colored with. So again, I'm going to use, but before I do that, before I use Blenderkit, I'm just going to add a basic blue color to this Principled BSDF. And then head over to Blenderkit and type in, I searched for edgeware. And here are the results that I got there. So you've got some really cool edgeware effects and materials you can play around with. I wanted a black and white one because I want to use that as a mask. And a mask tends to be black and white, so I click that and drag it and drop it onto the object in the viewport. You can see there, that's looking pretty good as a black and white mask. It seems to work well. And here's the material that it downloaded. So I'm going to plug that directly into the surface. We don't need the preview node. And this is an actual group that this creator, whoever made this shader, put all of the nodes into a group. So you can tab into that or click that little icon there, and that will show you the node breakdown of how that works. I'm not going to pretend to explain how all this works, understand how all this works, but it seems to do the trick. Now again, we've got the problem of it's using or looking for UVs. So we'll come back to that later on. And just inspect the model and see if there's any problems. So now we've got that node group there. I'm going to switch back to the leather one. Sorry, not the leather, the metallic blue that I just made earlier. And I copied that node, that group node, and I pasted it into this material. And that will form the mask for our metal. You can see there, it looks exactly the same. And we're going to have a quick look around to see if there's any problems with it. And at some point, because it's looking for UVs, you may spot a seam here and there, depending on how you created your object, of course. So anyway, I'm going to switch this back to object mode, as I did with the leather. And you can see that's broken it now. So again, we need to switch these from flat to box. And let's give it some blend value. Let's give it a value of 1 again. And the other nodes I'm going to leave alone for now. By the way, whilst we're there, you'll notice the bevel nodes in there. Excuse me. And if you were to resize your model, the edge wear will increase and decrease in size. So it will just look off. So if that happens to you, you want to go into the node group and change the bevel radius and the bevel parameters that are in those nodes. Something to bear in mind. Right, so with that done, I'm going to plug in the principled BSDF into the surface, make it metallic, increase the specular to 0.75. And that will do for now. Let's add a Musgrave texture or Musgrave texture. I'm going to plug that into the roughness. So something's going on there. You can see there. If I do Control Shift and click, that's using the node wrangler, by the way, so you can see what this node looks like. Switch that over to rigid multifractal, and let's change some of these values. I'll just speed through this. You can always pause the video, and actually at the end of the video, I've put screenshots of all the materials used for the hook shot, so you can always jump over there at the end and freeze frame those frames there. Okay, so let's add the texture coordinate and mapping nodes with Control T or manually, whatever you wish. Let's add a noise texture as well. And the reason I'm doing this is because the Musgrave looks good, but it's too regular and too clean. So we're going to introduce a noise texture, and that is going to disrupt the Musgrave texture. So we're going to drop that there and plug the factor into the B slot, and the result from there, the mix node, into the vector, and plug that into the A slot on the mix node. And you can see something's happening. So let's turn our attention to, actually let's plug that in first and move those out of the way. If you turn your attention to the noise texture and change some of these values, let's go with those, see what happens. And you can see there it kind of breaks up the whole texture down the line, and use the factor to control the strength of that noise texture. We'll come back to that again, I think, later on, because I think we need to change where it says mix on the mix node, change it to linear light. So we'll come back to that later, as I say. Let's make that, give that a bit more space, and now add a color ramp and drop that there. So I'm going to Control Shift and click that so we can see the effect of the color ramp in the viewport. So bring that up. Remember, this is plugged into the roughness, so black is a mirror finish, basically, very smooth. So we don't want that to be black. I'm going to bring that down so it's not completely matte. And here are the values that I've used. Or something like that will do. It's not a precise science. I'm trying to see there what the effect is, so let's go back and make some more tweaks. Here's the part I mentioned. Change that to linear light. Let's go with that. Now you can see the effect in the viewport. Let's have a quick look around, make sure that's looking good. Okay, I think that looks pretty cool for now. So let's add a bump node. Go to Vector, Bump, drop that there, and of course plug the normal output into the normal input just there, and we can connect that up from color to height. Let's bring that over a little bit, and of course the strength is too much on the bump node, so let's make sure that's turned down quite a bit. Let's try 0.1. Yeah, still too much, unless that's the look you're going for. So I want something a bit less aggressive, so 0.03. Yeah, that's good. I think I like that. Okay, let's make use of the edgeware node. Let's plug that into the surface. Just to see that it's obviously still there, it still works. What we're going to do is duplicate this node with Shift D. So now we have effectively two materials. So we've got this one and the one above it. And this one is going to be more of a raw metal look. So make it more white, off-white, whatever you like. Maybe let's turn down, or turn up, sorry, the specular to 1. The roughness can go down, something like that. 0.25 will do. And again, we can plug that into the roughness. So we have this node, or this material. And now we want to use a mix shader. So drop that onto the line. And that one we can plug into the lower slot. So we have this one here in the lower slot and the top one in the top slot. Obviously you won't see that because that's blending the two. All the way to the left is the top one, all the way to the right is the bottom one. So let's put it back to 0.5. And we're going to use the edgeware node as the factor, i.e. a mask like you would do in Photoshop. So there you go. So the white parts on the edgeware will show through, will show the second material. And the black parts will show the top material. So that's a really cool result. So after that, just assign the same material to all of the other parts that we use the metallic blue. To speed through that. I think I actually missed 2 of those spokes there on the reticle. So make sure you don't make that mistake as well. So a quick look around. You can see it does repeat there. But you can always rotate that around its own axis to give it a bit more variation. Okay. Let's have a look at the copper or brass parts on the handle. So those parts there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the metallic blue one. So I'm going to assign this one and then click this little icon to create another copy, or create a copy of the metallic blue. Rename that to copper. And now we can get rid of some of the stuff here. Change the color, for example. So that's the value that I've used, D4A48F as the hex value. And the second one, I've used 666045. Let's isolate that with the / key. Let's have a quick look at that. If you're happy with that, leave it as is. If not, go in and make some minor changes to the material. Perhaps that's a little bit too bumpy for brass, so turn that down just a touch. It looks a little bit weird there. So let's have a look at these bits over here. So what I'm trying to do here is make it a larger patch of disruption in the material, because it is a smaller part. So we don't really want it to be micro detailed. So just changing some of these scale values helps. And if I Control-Shift-click that one again, and that's fine. I moved on then to assigning that copper material to other parts on the hookshot. So that looks nice there. We'll also add it to this ring there. I think it works really well with the blue. And we'll add it to that ring at the front as well. Cool, so far so good. Nothing too complicated. Just going to switch up the HDRI there to this one. And that one, because it's mostly grey, so it has less influence on the colours in the viewport. I'm going to turn the world opacity to 0, less distracting. So with that done, let's turn our attention to the handle parts there, the handle supports. And again, I'm going to assign the metallic blue, copy it by pressing that icon again and renaming it to chrome. Now I admit I kind of overcooked this one a little bit. Chrome doesn't have to be this complicated. So I started by deleting the edgeware node, we don't need that. But I will keep the mix node and mix between two textures. So I'll proceed by changing the colors and their values. And this one I'm going to make a darker kind of rustic red. So for now, let's make it a bright red and see what happens. So at 0.5, it's trying to mix the two. So now I'm going to add a noise texture. Oops, not noise texture. A bumper node. Sorry, that was a complete mess, wasn't it? A color ramp, that's what I was trying to find. I don't know why I couldn't find it. So anyway, add a color ramp and plug that into the base color. And change these to whatever colors you like. It's quite subtle. And now we can add the noise texture. I'm going to plug the factor into the factor. It might be hard to see this in the viewport, but bear with it. It is there, but it's very subtle. If I Control-click there, you can barely see it. You can see there is something happening, but we're not quite there yet. I guess what I'm going for here is some sort of staining on the chrome. And it may not be super realistic, but I think it looked pretty good aesthetically. So again, just play around with some of these values on the noise texture. I turn the roughness all the way to 1, and that helps. And the detail to 6.5, and the scale at 0.5. Now we can crunch these two colors together to get a bit more of a contrast. And change the scale to whatever you think looks good. And we still haven't plugged in any mapping coordinates yet, so let's do that. Drag the vector to the vector, and that will of course change the scale. So what I did there was shift right click, hold down the shift button and right click across the line. That will create a reroute or a route node, just to make things a bit clearer. So anyway, going back to the mix shader, We can play around with that and see what happens there. Let's duplicate the noise texture. And this is going to be our mask between those two shaders. So let's plug that into the texture the mapping, and then that into the factor. So now we want to make this a better mask, and to do that, I'm going to add a converter color ramp. Let's increase the detail to 15, Control Shift, click the color ramp so we can see what's happening in the viewport. And I'm just going to fast forward this. This is all personal preference really, quite subjective. Let's give it the look that you want. So you can see there we've got perhaps too much of that secondary shader. So let's play around with some more values. Make that less prominent, have more chrome showing. So we can do that by changing the color ramp just there. I think that's much better, a bit more subtle. Okay. Now this part here, if I overcook the chrome, this is a complete nightmare. I copied the copper material, renamed it to dark metal, and changed the color values again there. It can be a dark brown or a dark gray, whatever you think is working well. And again, I'm going to use the texture and the color ramp as a mask on the mix node and change some of the values there. The one change I did make here is, and I'll come to that in a second, is because this part would theoretically get worn down by the chains around it. I wanted to scale these values here to make them texture look a bit more stretched. Something like that, basically. Let's try a value of 2.2 on the X and maybe stretch it a little bit on the Z-axis as well. Again, this isn't really important because you can't really see it under the chains anyway, but it doesn't take too long to do these. Once you have one shader, you just duplicate it and reuse it. So I'm just turning down some of the specularity values there to 0.5 on both of those. Make some more changes to the color ramp there, which is the mask, basically. I think that's fine. So, okay, so let's now turn our attention to the arrowhead. And we've got a mirror modifier on that already, so let's apply that first. And isolate it. And again, I'm going to duplicate the metallic blue, rename it to titanium. And now it's just a case of playing with the color values to get something that is appropriate for an arrowhead. You could leave it like that, but I wanted to add, as I wrote there, a subtle bump map. So there'll be slight indentations on the arrowhead, perhaps from some sort of impacts or something. So I'm going to reuse some of these nodes, connect them up, shift right click to create a route node, G to move it there so we can see a bit clearer. The lines are connecting lines. Let's plug that into the height of the existing bump node. We can't really see it, so I'm going to turn it to 1, just so we can see the effect happening in the viewport. And let's change some of these parameters and values on the color ramp. So I started by increasing the scale to 8, the detail to 7. Let's try 0.7 for the roughness. And you can see there, we've got a fairly generic low contrast noise texture. So let's bring these, crunch them in together like this. So we end up with small white patches here and there. Let's turn the strength down back to something a bit more sensible. And now just rotate around your model hopefully you can see some minor indentations on the arrowhead. I don't know if that comes across very well on YouTube, compression, but it's there. So I'm going to apply the same material to this part there. It kind of makes sense, being attached to the arrowhead. And okay, with that done, let's have a look at the black plastic of the dial. So once again, I'm going to copy the metallic blue, rename it to plastic, get rid of the edge wear and the second node. So we end up with just a basic node setup. So I make that a dark gray. Some of you may have noticed I didn't turn off metallic on that, which I should have done, but I do pick that up later on. So we'll come back to that. So let's play around with some of these existing nodes now. And it helps to think relative sizes between the components of the hook shot. So what I'm looking for here is more larger patches of distressed look rather than intricately detailed. Doesn't really make sense for the scale of the object. This is very much trial and error, so you might see me doing this quite a bit, but I try to fast forward it where I can, just like now. That's because I'm experimenting to see what the effect is by playing around with some of these values. And that's getting there, but let's turn that back to 1 to see the effect. And the problem I have with this is the bump is coming outward. We want it to go inward, so it's eating into the plastic. So with that, I can turn the strength down back to 0.03. And having a look at this, there you go, the metallic, turn that off. Now it becomes lighter. So now we can decrease the brightness of the color. And some minor tweaks again to the color ramp. And I'm happy with that, that looks good. Let's set the cursor to the world origin. I'm going to rotate the dial just to make it a little bit more interesting. Put it at an angle of 45 degrees. That will do. Cool, with that done, we can select these other parts here and apply the metallic blue. And finally the chains. I'll speed through this because the material is already there from the previous tutorial where I made the chains. And I'm going to assign the chrome texture to all of those chain parts there. As I said there, if the white plane is visible, head over to the object properties and make sure that render is turned off under instancing. Right, and then now we have the little markers. And I definitely went a bit too far with this one. I could have just made that a dark color and left it at that. But I wouldn't allow myself to do that, unfortunately. So I went through and added I copied those nodes there from another material. And I pasted them into this one, made some adjustments. Again, keeping the size relative to the object. That's probably too detailed really, but... So I want a shiny kind of plastic, but not quite perfectly clean. So we're still not quite seeing that effect yet. Let's make some more tweaks. There you go, a little bit more distressed. And then finally assign all of those, that material to all of the other little indicators. Have a look around, admire your work, and that is that, as they say. And here are all the screenshots for the metallic, for all of the shaders I used. So feel free to pause the screen and have a look at that. So for now, I'll just say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this series. I certainly did. And I've got some exciting stuff coming up for Halloween, so make sure you join me for that. So for now, I'm going to stop talking and let this video play out. For now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.